conversation because it can't be avoided, nor should it be. But while we're talking about the economy and the fact, as Hector suggests, that so many small businesses feel like government is in the way, that increasing regulation, etc., is making it more difficult for them to advance their businesses and their entrepreneurial spirit and genius. What say you about his indictment that many people still feel that government is in the way?
I think that government can do more to stimulate job opportunities and job growth in our communities. But when I look at jobs, I also want the American public to know that when you think of Latinos, the impact is not going to be the same throughout the Latino community. There are, number one, I want everybody to know that most Latinos in the United States are citizens of the United States and here legally. Some of us have been here for generations, more than generations, for centuries. Others have arrived 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But we're a community of families. So I want people to know that, but at the same time, I want government to be there because there's one really sad fact. And that is that it's great to see that OSHA and that the federal government, through its practices, is decreasing the number of people that get hurt while they go to work. It's good. People should go to work, put in a good day's work for a fair salary. And the deaths also are decreasing. But as that's happening overall within our workplace population, it's increasing among Latinos. That is, more Latinos to die every day working somewhere, and Latinos tend to get hurt more than any. So it's an increase. So from a macro perspective, great, the workforce is safer. From a perspective of Latinos, it's not as safe.
You said so many things I want to follow up on. I want to start first, Congressman, with this this notion of these 2 Hispanics per day who die in the workplace. That is, it's not just a shame, it's a moral disgrace that happens in this country on a daily basis. Before we jump straight away into immigration, talk to me a bit more about the ways that these workers are exploited, maltreated, and at times killed on the job.
The fact is that it's happening. The statistics bear it out. They don't get the training that they should get. They don't understand, and how would I say, they're not trained and inspired to dial 911 and to call to protect their rights. But depending on where you're at, so if you're in a state like Illinois, you'll probably do better because you have a governor and a mayor and a political system that has a history of being there on your side. But if you're in Mississippi, and I know people, Latinos, Mississippi, yeah, Alabama, some of the largest growth of Latinos in the United States is in the South of the United States of America. I was talking to Anna, I went 45 minutes outside of Orlando, and there were 500 migrant workers. And you know what they said to me? Can you help us with the police? I just want to be able to come and shop. Can you help us? Here's what happens. I don't get paid because they don't feel I have a recourse to demand payment for my work. So part of it is, and the other part I think just as overall, look, let's make sure that these 11 million people that are so important to us as a community of people, the 20% of Latinos that are undocumented in the United States of America, they're important too, because as they gain rights, so do the salaries, wages, benefits of everyone else. Because now you got employers that can't pick and choose one against the other. And I think that was an important vote last November. Say, stop the picking of winners and losers and picking one group against another.
Since we're in this now, let me go to the other end of this stage here, to Mary Rose Wilcox. She is a supervisor out of the great state of Arizona.
Yes.
Arizona, as we all know, has been ground zero, as it were, for this conversation about immigration, which is now happening in Washington. We will see if in the coming weeks or months hopefully not years, meaningful immigration reform is reached in Washington. But I thought I might come to you first, since the Congressman has moved us in that direction, to get a sense of what has happened in Arizona over the last few years. What is the state of, I can't say State of the Union, I'll say what is the state of Arizona? What's happening out there?
We do feel very isolated at times.
Yeah.
So thank you, first of all, for having us here. Arizona has just gone through hell the last 5 years. We are a state where it just got turned around entirely, and immigration became a prime issue. We had a thriving community. We have always had an ebb and flow across the border of workers. We're a large agricultural state. We're a large hospitality tourism state, and workers are needed. And the ebb and flow across the border had been just a natural thing for Arizona. Many of us are third and fourth generation families, Mexican American, with roots in Mexico, and many of our families still have relatives there. When 9/11 occurred and the border shut down, people were trapped in our country, and many people started bringing families up illegally, and people just started to see the growth of the Hispanic community, and there became a very repressive movement. People got worried, they got afraid that jobs were going to be taken by people that weren't looking like other Arizonans or what they thought they should look like. And people started saying everybody should be a terrorist who comes from another country. We have to be careful. The backlash in Arizona was tremendous. You saw legislation coming up, and nobody said anything because everybody was very afraid. Everybody was very afraid that they would lose jobs, they would just lose political positions, and the culture got created that bills started coming out of our legislature that was very repressive. We were doing E-Verify before the rest of the nation, and that set up a really hard situation for jobs that you were talking about. Because if you look Latino, if you had a Latino last name, all of a sudden you were the one who wasn't called for the job. You were the one that people hesitated, because then I'll be questioned if they're undocumented. So little by little it got worse and worse, and we now have a situation that SB 1070 was passed. The Supreme Court has overturned parts of it, thanks to MALDA, the ACLU, and other entities. But we are still living in a very hard society. It's getting a little better now that the Supreme Court has acted on parts of 1070, but police departments and police chiefs have stood up and said, this is enough, we must get immigration reform, because we cannot get cooperation in many of the parts of our city that need police coverage, but everybody's afraid to talk to them, because they have no idea what will happen. So the fear is there.
I'm glad you shared those stories, because as I intimated earlier, I think part of what gets lost in these conversations, particularly about the issue of immigration, is the humanity. We never seem to focus in on the humanity of these everyday people and of these fellow citizens. My friend Antonio Gonzalez, he wears a couple